Hello, everyone. Today I'd like to share the story of The Forest Beyond the Mountain. I'm going to read it to you. Alice and Bob are both teenagers in the village beside the mountain. Alice is different from Bob in that her parents never told her what was on the other side of the mountain. One day Alice is visiting with Bob, and she comments about how the weather has been particularly dry lately. Bob says, "In the forest beyond the mountain, it rains every other day." Alice responds, "I don't believe there is a forest beyond the mountain." Bob laughs. "Oh, don't be silly. Everyone in the village knows about the forest beyond the mountain." Alice says, "I don't. I've never been there. My parents never told me there was a forest beyond the mountain." Bob straightens up and says, "Well, there is." Alice says, "Will you bring me there?" Bob says, "No, I don't need to. Just ask anyone in the village what's on the other side of the mountain." Alice says, "I don't care what they say. I want you to bring me there to discover it. Will you go there and bring me back some branches, then?" Bob says, "Well, that's silly. It's common sense that you should believe what everyone else in the village says. They'll all tell you there will be a sunset tonight. Would you doubt them about that?" Ha ha ha! Alice says, "I've known many sunsets, but never a forest beyond the mountain." Bob says, "What do you think is on the other side of the mountain?" Alice says, "I don't know." Bob says, "Then you have no good reason to doubt that there's a forest beyond the mountain." Alice says, "Actually, I have no good reason to believe it." Bob says, "So you trust your two parents more than everyone else in the village that there's no forest beyond the mountain?" Alice says, "What were they wearing?" Bob says, "What are you talking about?" Alice says, "What were my parents wearing? What clothes were they wearing when they told me there was no forest beyond the mountain?" Bob replies, "How should I know?" Alice says, "Then how should you know that they ever told me that? You don't know that. In fact, they never told me that." Bob replies, "You said, 'My parents told me there was never a forest beyond the mountain.'" Alice says, "No, I never said that. You're mistaken." Bob says, "Well, it was something like that. So anyway, why do you think there's no forest beyond the mountain?" Alice says, "I've already said that I don't know what's on the other side of the mountain. I've never been there. How could I insist there's no forest there?" Bob says, "But that's what you're doing. I say there's a forest beyond the mountain. You say, I believe that's false." Alice says, "You need to pay closer attention to what I say." Bob says, "So you do believe there's a forest beyond the mountain, then? At last you admit it." Alice says, "No. You say there's a forest beyond the mountain. I say I don't believe you." Bob says, "Oh, so I'm a liar?" Alice says, "No, I have never suggested that you're a liar." Bob says, "You don't need to suggest it. You've been saying it all along, and the rest of the village, too." Alice says, "Firstly, I absolutely reject that I have called you or anyone else in the village a liar. Secondly, even if I had accidentally said that, I'm clarifying my intentions now." Bob says, "Oh, I know your intentions all too well." Alice replies, "In that case, it's silly of me to stick around. I'll go home and eat supper, and you stay here and continue to argue with my intentions. I'll come back tomorrow and you can let me know how fruitful the discussion was." After a long pause, Bob says, "This is really your parents' fault, you know. They should have paid closer attention to the rest of the village and raised you so that you wouldn't be so misaligned with everyone else. I hope that if you ever have children, you don't repeat their mistakes. Tell them about the forest beyond the mountain." And so, just like Bob, I urge you all to share this story about the forest beyond the mountain. Thank you.